Hi, this is Nicole, and today I'm going to be sharing with you my technique for creating a rotating stamped background with any stamp set that you may have. You will need an ink to stamp your template with, as well as 4 inks in coordinating colors that you're going to use to stamp your background. I will be using these 4 dewdrops from Memento in Tangelo, Cantaloupe, Paris Dusk, and Rich Cocoa. I will also be using the My Monthly Hero Kit from Hero Arts, March 2018. As of the filming of this video, they still have some of these kits in stock, so if you want one, you can still grab it. I have also pre-trimmed a piece of white typing paper to 6x6 that I'll be using for my template, as well as a piece of white cardstock also trimmed to 6x6 that I'll be using for my stamping. I'm going to start by folding my piece of white typing paper into quarters. This will help me to determine where I'm going to position each of the stamps that I place on my MISTI. I highly recommend using a stamp positioner like the MISTI, but you could also use a large acrylic stamping block if you don't have a stamping tool. I'm going to start by placing my first stamp in the lower right quadrant of my paper, positioning it close to the center of the page, and then I'm going to go ahead and transfer it to the door of my MISTI. Now I'm going to take my ink and I'm going to ink up that stamp. You don't have to take very good care to make sure that it's going to be a nice solid image because this is just our template. Now, just as you would with a large rotating stamp, I'm going to stamp my image onto my paper, rotating the page each time until I have all 4 quadrants stamped. I'm going to place the next stamp that I want to add to my background in a different quadrant but close to the first stamp. Then I'm going to repeat the process of transferring it to the door of my MISTI and then stamping it in all 4 quadrants of the paper, rotating the paper between each stamp. The process is the same for all of the rest of the stamps that we are going to add to this background. Now, when you're selecting your stamp set, you really only need enough stamps to fill up a 3x3 section of space. So don't worry if you don't have a ton of stamps. It really doesn't take very many stamps to get a full background. Once you get to the point where you're adding more than one stamp to a section, you're just going to want to make sure that you're not placing any stamps directly next to each other. This will help to ensure that you're not going to have a big block of color in any section of your paper. You may get to a point in adding stamps that you kind of run out of places to place them where they're not going to be directly next to each other. So in this case, I try to make sure that that stamp that I'm placing next to another one that will be the same color is in a different orientation so that it flows a little bit better. Okay, now I only have a couple of stamps that I need to add before our background is completely finished, and then I will show you how to make a template of your design so that you can reuse it later if you want to pull this out and not go through the whole process of adding all the stamps and trying to figure out where they go a second time. Once I have a completely full background, I'm going to get another sheet of paper and I'm going to ink up all of the stamps that I've transferred to the door of my MISTI. Then I'm going to go ahead and stamp that onto that white paper. And now I have a template that's going to let me line those stamps up later if I want to reuse this design. Now all I need to do is clean off my stamps so that I can start stamping with the colors that I'm going to be using for my background. I use a baby wipe to clean them off, and then I'll go back and dry it with a microfiber cloth. I'm going to start my stamping with this Memento Dewdrop in Cantaloupe, inking up all of the stamps that I've transferred to the door of my MISTI and making sure this time that I'm inking them up well so that I get a nice solid image. Now, the benefit of using the MISTI here is that if I don't get a perfectly solid image, I can go back and re-ink some of those stamps if I need to. The next color that I'm going to use is this Memento Dewdrop in Tangelo. The process is the same for all of the colors I'm going to use. You just need to make sure that you rotate your paper between each set of stamping. Now I'm going to ink up my stamp in Rich Cocoa and stamp one more time and then I will rotate the paper and finally stamp my last color of Paris Dusk. Once you're done, you'll have a beautiful stamped background that's very similar to the turnabout stamps that are made by other manufacturers, and it's with the stamps that you already use. I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial and that you'll give me a follow on Facebook and Instagram at Cutting Edge Crafts. Have a great week, and I hope to see you again soon.